Hey guys, welcome to another review of the Percy Jackson series. Sorry as this upload's a little bit late, but man, it's still pretty good. Because now I'm actually connected to this series now, I've actually been seeing some other people's thoughts on this series, and they seem to be some are really positive, and then some people are complaining there isn't enough action, but I don't really mind the lack of action, especially in this episode, which we'll be going through right now. This episode adapts the time period after the St. Louis Bridge with the whole Ares section, the whole Tunnel of Love thing, which really is the setup for Percy and Annabeth becoming closer permanently for the rest of the series. I rock with it. Rock with it super hard. I first things first, Ares, the guy they got for Ares, was great. He was perfect. Every time he talked, everything he was saying was actually great. I love the performance. I love the energy. I love how he was written. He was very much just a slightly updated version of what was in the book, from what I remember, and I can heavily appreciate that. Loved that his design was pretty much the same. Everything about Ares was top tier. No complaints there. A thing that I didn't like was that they cut the scene where the water creature, I can't remember their names right now, talks to him underwater. They give you the information, they just tell it to you instead of showing it to you. Maybe they'll flash back to it later, so there's some lead up to it, but I think that's another part of the show's budgetary restraints, because let's be real, the show has budgetary restraints like up the wazoo. I appreciate that they're willing to work within their budget, but the show does have budgetary restraints, and it shows with how they write certain things, and that's why the action has been de-emphasized. And a perfect example is in the Tunnel of Love scene. In the show, it's the exact same setup as in the books. Ares wants them to get his shield at an amusement park, and Percy and Annabeth go to pick it up. They encounter some traps. They take the tunnel of love thing. They figure out it's from Hephaestus. And in the book, there's a scene where they get caught in like some sort of with some sort of spider thing, and then there's a whole thing with Annabeth freaking out because she's not good with spiders because, she has a bad experience with that. It's like her one, super fear. There's a whole thing with that, and they just completely axed it. But they axed it for something that couldn't have happened in the books because they're locked to just Percy's perspective. And that's the thing that I really like about the show, consistently trying to show as many perspectives outside of Percy as possible to flesh the other characters out by themselves without Percy being directly connected. Grover got to talk to Ares and try to get some information out of him and butter him up a little bit. They give Grover a little bit more of a trickster personality in the show and a little bit more of a smooth talker. I can get down with that. And Annabeth, and while they're in the Tunnel of Love, instead of the whole action set piece with spiders and all that, and it goes crazy, that is what happened in the book, what they do is that they reference another piece of Greek mythology with the Hera chair thing that Hephaestus made. And Percy, showing off his fatal flaw, his loyalty, and his willing to self-sacrifice almost 3 times in a row now. It's like the Medusa fight where he went to save his friends immediately when she started talking shit. Then there's also the St. Louis Bridge where he pushed them away so he can try and fight off the Chimera by himself. And then now this, where he's willing to sacrifice himself in the chair so that Annabeth can go on and fix the situation without him, because he feels that he isn't as good and he's willing to sacrifice himself. That is Percy. We did it. We're consistent. This is a consistent flaw. They're not going to bring it up yet, obviously, but it's something that's going to be brought up later, and I'm glad that they're addressing it now. Everything's good there. They changed how the thing happened, but it still is reinforcing the point and belaboring the point, and that's what this adaptation is trying to aim to do. It's not an accurate adaptation. We have gone way past that. The accuracy of this adaptation is not it. It's taking the things that happen in the book and either expanding them or twisting them to have more focus on the other characters because we're no longer locked to Percy. And I will constantly defend an adaptation that is trying to do that, especially if they're making changes sometimes for the betterment of something else, which in this case was giving Annabeth a really strong moment so anyone in the audience can get it that she is not a bad person. She's not a bitch. She cares, and she's also starting to care about Percy. You can now see Annabeth falling for Percy early, which is accurate to the book, where she fell for him first. Percy doesn't realize that, but she liked him first. And Percy just learns to like her. Percy doesn't even realize he likes her until book 3, and even then he kind of is fighting himself on that. And he's still like, do I like her? Or like, she's just a really good friend. Like, Percy is slow on the uptake until like book 4, where things start getting weird. And they have not, and he's in a weird love triangle until book 5, where he finally like makes a decision. So we can see the early forms of that now. And they added a full scene that was mostly dialogue. And hey, we got to see Hephaestus early, because we don't really get to see Hephaestus in the books till book 4, technically. That's when we see him for the first time. Like, at least personally, that's when we see him for the first time. And in the... But in the show, we see Hephaestus and Annabeth get to have a conversation. I like the focus on making Athena a little bit more of a shitty mother. I like seeing that Annabeth is actually less pro-God than she was in the comic. I mean, not in the comic, in the books, where a lot of the characters are pretty pro-God. Till later, where Rick Riordan and Mark of Athena kind of like started criticizing himself for that, and the characters started becoming more and more apathetic / upset with how shit was going for them. I remember specifically a scene in Mark of Athena where Percy was just talking about like, man, it's like I've really been doing this for this long, and honestly, this is kind of bullshit that they have us doing this stuff, and I hate it. I personally hate it. And so I like that we're trying to integrate that hammer home the full time. The gods are not great parents. The gods are not great people to each other. We're not sugarcoating it. They are not the heroes. They are not the good guys. They're just better than the worst thing. Ares talks about it, about how crappy their family is, and he revels in the shittiness of the family. But then we get to see the scene with Hephaestus and Annabeth, where she basically denounces the whole family system. She's like, he doesn't run like that. He doesn't do this glory all or nothing. Effort is all that matters. There's no all this fighting and hatred and glory for me and the selfishness. I hate it, and it's not cool, and he's different than the rest of us, and I want to be like that too. Maybe I was someone who really only cared about it, and she was earlier in this series, but she's basically coming to terms with how that behavior is not, that glory mindset behavior is not healthy. And I so heavily appreciate the show trying to cover that because the book really didn't. The big conflict in the book between Percy and Annabeth and how it gets resolved is just she's like, I have to hate you because my mom hates your dad, and Percy's like, well, that's just kind of stupid. Can we just work together? And then they grow from there. But I like this, that like Percy has something about him that's different from everyone else because of how his mother raised him and didn't prepare him for this Greek mythology life by shaping him to be nicer and selfless and care about the people in his life. And it's wonderful how they're handling it. Of course, Percy gets out of the seat because Hephaestus shows pity and also says to Annabeth he's going to just put in a good word with his mother. Percy gets to get really angry at Ares, getting really fed up with this guy, starting his long stint of being beefing with the God of War and still somehow winning almost all his fights. Except, I think Ares screwed him over one time. Ares, like, messed him up, and it was bad. But it's great that, like, we got that, and now we're headed to Las Vegas, where we're gonna meet Hermes. At least we're going specifically to meet Hermes at the Lotus Casino, which is different from the books where they just stayed there for a night. I like that every time they're going into a trap or a bad place or something where you're like, bro, can you guys not be stupid? It's usually not within their control, or it's within their best interest to still go there. And it's just something I appreciate. I appreciate making an effort for the characters to not be stupid. It's amazing. Yeah, so I'm just going to wrap up my thoughts there at risk of talking about the future episodes that aren't out yet. I'll see you guys next week, hopefully closer to the release date of the actual episode.